What a time it has been. Hello. Hello all. This is Millie with Millie's Vines, and you might not know this, you won't know this, but I have filmed this video. This is now my third time, and I'm kind of losing my mind, but at the same time, I am just not going to be stopped. You know those times when you're really feeling like the universe doesn't want you to complete something and you just keep pushing through? That is what I'm doing. So we're here and we're on my iPhone, and I hope that this quality is relatively okay. And thank goodness this mic connects to my new phone, and it's all gonna work out. It's all gonna be good. But take three. Again, I'm Millie with Millie's Vines. If you're new here, I'm sorry this is already a little bit chaotic, but today's video is hopefully going to be chatty, and we're going to be talking about some things I wish I knew earlier on in my plant career, because career is intense. Let's use a different word. In my pursuit of plants, I wish that I thought about these things maybe a little bit proactively, just so I had a different experience. But I will say this is going to be a strictly opinion-based video, so at the end of the day, mistakes are all lessons, and I don't regret any of these things. I wouldn't take it back. But if I had a new friend who was looking to get into this kind of space, these are some things that I might recommend just to think things through and kind of be a little bit more intentional with the hobby. But at the end of the day, plants are kind of like Pokemon, and if you have that urge to collect them all, go collect them all. Like, we live and we learn. We got one shot here in this life, and you might as well just do what makes you happy. But I thought that this would be fun. When I originally recorded this video, I was doing some repots, so it was like I was able to do something with my hands and not feel as awkward just talking to a camera. I did those repots. My camera, I don't know what happened. I mean, I do know what happened. It definitely flung off a tripod when I was filming one day, and I've been having some issues with it since then. Did go to a couple camera repair shops, and because it's a Fuji, I learned that you have to ship it directly back to Fuji. So what that means, I'm not sure. How long of a process that's going to be, I'm also not sure. I'm scared to know. But in the meantime, we're going to be here on my iPhone, and I hope that's okay. So I have some notes or some bullet points for today's video. I've got my computer to my left, and instead of repots, because I'm out of those, I'm fresh out of repots, believe it or not, I'm going to just be doing some watering and just some various things so I don't just sit here and like talk to a screen. Hopefully that's okay. And if you guys are still watching after this long intro, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. But let's get into it. Okay, we are gonna get started with my jungle boogie, who is very, very thirsty. And we've got our cute little aesthetic watering can. We've got our arbor here because it's growing season, y'all, and we need to be making sure that our plants are ready and prepared. Okay, so I need my glasses. I am kidding myself. Okay, we're back in the game. My first tip, lesson, mistake, whatever you want to call this, is not knowing your conditions. So I see this often at the shop that I work at where I sell plants. There are a lot of new people that are getting into the plant pursuit. I gotta think of a better word, but we're just gonna roll with that. And oftentimes when I ask them what the lighting is that they have in their homes, they're not certain. So something that I notice is not only are they not certain, but they also don't really have a spot in mind for the plant. It's kind of like they pick the plant and then hope that they have the right space for it. And I was guilty of this too. It's not the biggest deal, but it does make a big difference, because I have sold like cacti to people and they'll put it in the middle of a kitchen and there's no window in sight. And that does not set you up for success. So I think the biggest thing that I would encourage new plant people to kind of be familiar with is the lighting and the space in which you want to have your plants. So if you know the orientation of the windows, like where the windows face, that helps a lot. If you know if it's south or west exposure, you know that the lighting is going to be really, really intense, and certain plants will do really well with that, like something maybe like a cycad or some type of cacti or succulent. Those would do really well in south or west exposures. But if you have something like a calathea, that would need to be pulled back significantly. Maybe a synapsis. You just have to be mindful of the orientation of your windows, because it helps a ton. If you have north-facing windows, a lot of plants are going to struggle because that's usually the least amount of light if you're in like North America. Having an idea of the exposure that the light will get and just being mindful of like, is it close to an air vent, because that will really tear plants up. There's just a lot of things that you need to be familiar with, or it will be helpful if you're familiar with, before you bring plants into your space. So kind of have an idea of the room that you want to add plants to and then get familiar with it. I remember I used the app Planta just to see the orientation, because I wasn't super familiar, and they have like light meters, so you can tell the intensity of it as well. And I found that that was super helpful for me when I was first starting out. So that is the biggest one, is get familiar with your space, get familiar with the conditions, the lighting. Are you able to provide humidity? Do you live in a very arid environment like myself, where you're gonna have to run a humidifier for certain plants? Just be familiar with the space that you have to offer. Number two is kind of similar. So you wanna be aware of the environment that you have for plants. And then you also, ideally, and this, it's up to you, and if you like the surprise of it all, and if you like, oh God, it's so heavy. Oh. If you like kind of just figuring it out as you go, which oftentimes that's how I am, then go for it. Looking back though, I purchased a lot of plants that just weren't a good fit for me. And what I mean by that is, I would recommend, if you're getting especially like a new genus of plants that you've never had before, I would recommend researching the care and just like the requirements to make sure that that plant flourishes. For me, I did this with aglaonemia, I did this with calathea, or I didn't do this with these guys. And I have probably had 3 calathea before I actually started researching the genus, and they all died like very, very quickly. I instantly put them in spots with too much lighting. I didn't use filtered water. I had no supplemental humidity, and the plants did not fare well. Not only did they not fare well, they died very quickly, like very quickly. And that was early on in my plant career. And I was like, wow, I have a black thumb. And I really didn't. It's just I didn't do my research beforehand. So point being, if I had done my research, I probably never would have got a calathea in the first place. Same thing with succulents. Oftentimes they're just so cute, and sometimes you'll get them in bloom and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to have this. And you get them home and all the leaves fall off, or you overwater them, or they all crisp up from the bottom up. Like, I've been through it all with succulents too. It really helps if before you're getting a plant, or even when you're at the plant store, I've done that plenty of times. I'm like, ooh, what the heck is this? I research it. And if I read the care information or like what's suggested for them, I sometimes in the plant shop will be like, nope, not happening, not coming home with me. That is how I am with Anthurium for the majority. I know they do really well in like a cabinet. I don't have a cabinet. I don't run humidity constantly. So if you research plants beforehand, oftentimes you can set yourself up for more success, just knowing like if it's going to be a good fit for you or not, or kind of having your headset on, or like prepared for what the care is going to require. So I would really, really recommend that if you are able, because sometimes it's just not going to be a match. The third thing, and this I kind of talked about in the beginning of this video, but with plants, and I'm speaking from experience, and still to this day I'm kind of like this, but there's like that Pokemon effect where you just like want to collect them all, and it's really hard not to. So when I say this one, like, it's not that serious. If you want to collect them all and that's just the journey that you want to take, that's fine. That is the journey that I took too my first year. It is all a blur. I can't even tell you how many plants I had. Most of them are not here to this day, but that was kind of crucial to me like learning and maturing as a plant parent. I would say looking back though, I wouldn't do it as quickly and as heavy, because there was periods of time where I was like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. Like, I can't keep up with all of this. Every time I turn around, there's a plant that's like just looking lethargic, needing water. There's a pest issue. I don't even know how to place them and display them. And all of a sudden it's like cluttered and overwhelming. It was too much too soon for me personally. So I would just say be mindful of that. A lot of times you think that you have it under control until like you have the first summer hit. I know in Arizona, when that happened to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I was watering plants like every 4 to 5 days. I wasn't used to it. Just keeping up with the level of needs, going from 0 plants to 30 plants within the first month, was insane for me. And I don't know if I would recommend that to others. But like I said, if that's a journey that you want to take, feel free. That is exactly what I did too. I would just say like the plants are going to be there. So maybe just slow down just a little bit, just a little bit. I did things where I would only get a plant a month or like one plant a week if you want to be a little bit more realistic, and that helped me scale back and be more intentional with my plant purchases. So that's a kind of obvious one, but I had to throw that in there because I know most of us are guilty of it. The third thing, which is actually funny because I'm literally doing it as we speak, is only top watering my plants. And for some reason, when I first started, I never thought about bottom watering. To be honest, it can be more time consuming, and I don't know. It's just sometimes like with certain pots, it's difficult. Like if it's like glazed ceramic, sometimes you can't really tell if it's actually absorbing concrete. It's just sometimes I struggle depending on the pot, but especially when it's terracotta, I find that bottom watering helps a lot when it comes to Hoyas or succulents or cacti or any like string of pearls, string of dolphins. When you bottom water, which I guess I'm kind of doing now because it's been sitting in here, it forces the roots to grow down further into the pot, which will help have a more established root system. So not only that, but it also helps with keeping the plants hydrated for longer, I find personally. And I just think it's good to switch it up because if you're only watering from the top, oftentimes you're kind of depleting the medium that is in the pot and you're just like washing away things. So I would just say do a good mix. I try to bottom water my plants at least once a month. Like I said, my cacti and my Hoyas, I really like to do it for my Rhipsalises, peperomia, anything that has a finer root system, I find it really helps with. So just kind of mix up the way that you're watering your plants, and I think that you'll find a lot of success with just having a healthier, more established plant. The other thing, and I was kind of mentioning this, so the bulk of my plants are in terracotta. So like this guy, for example, terracotta, wood, concrete. These are going to be really porous pots, meaning that they are going to absorb water very quickly, but also dry up really quickly. So if you're prone to overwatering, I would say definitely stick to terracotta in the beginning just because it's a little bit harder. It's still possible, but it's a little bit harder to overwater. If you're using something, and I'll grab some examples. So examples being, this one is obviously terracotta right here to my left, but something like this, which is actually what I repotted in the original video that I was gonna make. This is my Rhipsalis. Now I have this one in a plastic nursery pot. So if you want something that is not as porous as, let's say, like terracotta, plastic nursery pots are good because they typically have tons of drainage at the bottom, but they hang on to moisture a little bit longer. And the more that I learn about Rhipsalis, the more that I learn that they do not want to go bone dry. They will lose these like pads, leaves pretty quickly if they dry out. So I don't want to pot this one into terracotta unless it's like a pretty big pot, big-ish. I'm just a little bit nervous that I'm underwater and that might not be a good situation for it. So if you have something like a calathea or maybe like an aglaonemia, sometimes peperomias, plants that want to have some type of moisture in their soil kind of at all times, I would stick to plastic nursery pots, sitting it in a decorative pot. Or if you want to do something ceramic, this one has a drainage hole. It's ceramic and it hangs on to moisture a lot more. So just be mindful when you're picking out a plant. If you know like it's a cactus and it wants to dry out completely. One time I had a cactus in a ceramic glazed pot and it rotted instantly. And I like barely watered it. I think I watered it like, I don't know. The first time I watered it was like 2 weeks after I got it and it rotted because it sat in water too long. So just pick the right type of pot for the plants that you're getting because they might end up rotting or just drying out too quickly. So it's not always about just finding a cute pot and just throwing a plant in it. You kind of do need to be intentional there. The other thing, so if you saw my last video kind of preparing my plants for spring, one thing that I noticed, and it happens to all of us, I think, is getting a little bit lazy with plant care. If you're ever feeling like things are really easy and you haven't had a pest outbreak and you're like, wow, my plants are just so well behaved, like this is just amazing, you should probably do some preventative measures because it's just risky. It's just risky having a big collection and being a little bit too lax with it. And I've done this before, and that was why I made that last YouTube video, because I know some others probably could use like a little reminder of like, hey, check on your plants. When it comes to pest, oftentimes, I'm trying to see which one is the best to grab. Like in between, if you guys can see on this juggle boogie here, where like the stem connects with the base of the leaves, sometimes on the backs, and right in here, you'll find a lot of pest issues. Right in the center of the leaves, sometimes you'll have some issues. Check the soil. Normally, when the seasons change, you can have things like fungus gnats that come out and about. I always like to be mindful when seasons change, because I just find that that is when things happen. So I would do a mix of like neem oil spray downs. That's something that I use that's like more natural. Or I had someone recommend Arbor has an insecticide. Thank you for giving me a little tip on that, because I would love to try it. And you can actually use that to cleanse and make sure the soil is good to go too. So I think being preventative with pest care is definitely the way to go, because if you are reactive rather than proactive, it can be extremely overwhelming. And I would just say, always be mindful and be on top of that. The least I would ever do stuff like that is probably every 90 days. Like if you're not doing this every 3 to 4 months, every 3 to 6 months, let's say, you might start having some issues and it's just not worth it and it's hard to catch up on. So that would be one of my biggest tips, is just be mindful. That kind of goes back to not having too many plants too soon, because the second you try to do pest care on 75 plants, it is crazy. It is like a 2-day experience for me personally, and it's really overwhelming. So just kind of get used to the life cycle of owning plants before you just have to do all of that really early on in your plant pursuits. Why do I keep saying that? I don't know. Okay, next one. So I have talked about this before. If you guys know me like in real life, I used to be a hairdresser and I love to cut my plants. So I know a lot of people are nervous about cutting plants, and I'm here to say, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Plants need haircuts just like humans, and it really does help reinvigorate the plant to grow new vines. Usually what happens, so this is my Cebu, the second that I start to see the internodes spacing apart too much, so that would mean like this leaf to this bottom leaf, I cut it. Like literally, I'm probably going to cut this as we speak. I would cut right underneath this last leaf. You can propagate the rest, and then eventually once they have roots on them, maybe 2 to 3 inches, you can pop it back into the base of the plant. But what will happen where you cut it is it will eventually branch out into 2 vines. So you can imagine that will create a fuller plant all the way down, and it branches out into 2 vines. It helps promote new growth up in the base of the plant, and it's just better for the plant overall. I truly do find that when I cut back my plants, especially like beginning of spring, the beginning of the growing season, that they just seem to be just awaken. It is just, it's insane. I can't recommend it enough, especially when you have long trailing plants like this guy. You can't tell because I've wrapped him up inside of himself like multiple times, but if you just come in and literally just chop this off like this, you will be mind blown with how much growth that you will receive. So especially for your vining plants, just cut them back. Don't be scared, I'm telling you. And then you can propagate it and you can have more plants. You can give it away to people. It is just, it's the best thing ever. So don't be afraid, just do it. And that's my tip there. So another thing, and I was kind of doing this, I just maybe didn't speak on it. Filtered water I find helps a lot, especially when it comes to plants that have thinner leaves or anything that's just sensitive to hard minerals. For me, I have found that most of my philodendron don't struggle with it too much, but Syndapsis for some reason, and this isn't my usual camera, so I'm not gonna be able to zoom in and all that, but you can tell like what the heck is happening here. I think this might be a burn situation partially, but I also think that it just was not happy with the hard water I was using. Syndapsis, I strictly only use filtered water on. I only use filtered water on my calathea if I ever have them. Aglaonemia, I use them on spider plants. if you have a spider plant and you have brown tips, it's probably a hard water issue. It could be a lot of things. Sometimes tips just go brown and it is what it is, speaking on behalf of my monstera right now. But filtered water helps a lot. For the majority, I think it's probably better to use them as a whole, whether the plant shows that it's struggling from that or not. Cacti, I don't really think they care because cacti are just happy to receive whatever water they get. I think that's another tip is while it is a pain in the butt to use filtered water, it really does help, and it's not fun to have brown tips on your plants. So just be mindful of that and maybe kind of look up when you get a new plant, is this plant prone to like burning from unfiltered water? Because that is something that I have learned the hard way. So this is kind of in tandem with that last one. So when it comes to arbor is more of a natural option for fertilizer. I have found that when I use stuff like Miracle Grow from Home Depot, I sometimes can struggle with chemical burns. So if you are using something that's more chemically or like synthetic, I would say dilute it heavily and make sure that you're not over fertilizing, because that can really lead to like not necessarily fungal infections, but it can lead to burns throughout the plant, and that can be really hard, if not impossible, to come back from. You have to do a lot of rinses and it's just a whole entire thing. So I normally aim towards like fish food or like natural alternative fish fertilizer. I don't do too much of the chemically stuff because it's just a little bit tricky. If you are using that, like I said, just make sure to dilute it, because it can just, if you're not careful with it, you can end up with a pretty big problem. So filtered water and ideally natural fertilizers are the way to go for me, at least. And then the last thing, I think that's all the plants that needed watering. So that was semi-productive. But the last thing, and this is, I was like, do I include this or do I not? Because it doesn't have to be this deep, but I think that understanding yourself as a plant parent and understanding how you want to live with plants in your space is important when you get into this. And you might not necessarily think that deep about it early on, but I know like year 1 to year 2, I started finding people that I really liked how they styled their plants and displayed their plants. I watched Harley G a lot. I still do. I love her. Wild Fern, I love her. The person I gravitated to the most, though, was Benji. If you've seen his videos, please comment below, because I'm absolutely obsessed with every single thing he does. And his home was so beautiful, and I know his new apartment is going to be so beautiful, and the way that he displays plants is so cohesive, but it's also so livable, and it's not like the first thing you notice when you walk in is like, oh my gosh, this person is like a plant hoarder. He does it in a way where it's like really tasteful and it's not overwhelming, but it's still like architecturally and design centered, and I took a lot of inspiration from him still to this day. So I would say the fun thing about getting to be a plant parent is you get to decide the way that you grow plants, and you get to decide the way that you display them, and it's so much fun. So I've seen all different types of ways to go about having plants. I have friends that will have wired racks, and they have like one plant room and it's a whole bunch of like big shelves with grow lights, and they have a humidifier, and they have like the temperature monitored and they have the humidity levels monitored, and it's very like scientific, I don't know the word to say, but it's very easy for them to monitor the space, and it makes sense for them. So you can go that route. You can go, some people love to have the IKEA cabinets. I would love to do that one day. That's a super cool way to grow plants. There's people like Sydney the plant guy who do vertical moss bowls and try to get plants as big as possible. There are just so many ways that you can grow plants, and I would say kind of look for people that you relate to and that you like how they grow their plants, and then kind of mimic that in your own way. That helps a ton, and it will help you be a little bit more intentional with the plants that you get as well. So for me, you're not going to see a whole lot of like crazy variegation. You're not going to see like pink and red aglaonemias in my collection. You're not going to see anthurium, and that's kind of intentional because either the care doesn't fit for me or the color throws me off. I'm more of like a muted, earthy girl, and I find that I get like overstimulated if there's too many plants condensed into one another, or if there's just too much like variety. I don't know how to describe it. I just get sensory overload from stuff like that. So I know myself, I've kind of gone through having colorful plants and like wild plants and like begonias. You're not probably going to see that in my collection. It's just I know myself at this point, and I know what would work and what wouldn't. And a lot of times that's care, a lot of times it's design. It's just a lot of things. So I would say the more mature you become with your plant collection, just like learn and understand what you like and what you don't. And once you are at a point where you're happy with your plant collection, I would say start to be really intentional about like the plant and pot pairings and the way that you're displaying it and just all of the little details. I think that's where I find the most enjoyment now. It's not even necessarily going out and getting a new plant. It's like, how can I level up the way that I'm displaying it? Or how can I switch up the cohesion that I find in my apartment? I don't know, it's just nice for me to be like very detailed now that I've kind of got it out of my system. So I don't know if any of this was interesting or helpful. I truly don't, but I would love to know if you guys either relate to some of these mistakes or lessons or tips. I would love to know tips that you would add to this as well. I think it's so cool to hear if people have gone through similar things or if they would recommend going out and buying all the plants, or just any feedback that you'd have. I would love to read down below. I'm hoping that we have lots of comments and we can just all engage and interact together. It is so much fun. But I think that is it for today. If you guys made it this far, I appreciate you guys so much. And I hope that we can get my camera back soon. But for now, I don't know. I'm praying the audio works out. I'm praying that this footage is okay. And we're just going to keep going, guys, because we can't be stopped. We can't be stopped. That is it for today. And thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys in the next video.